Midnight Mirror Woman, True Horror Stories, Dark Tales. Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today, I'm going to share with you a story that kept me awake for several nights. It's about a woman who appears in mirrors exactly at midnight, and what happens when you see her, well, you'll find out. But before we begin, if you enjoy real terror stories like this one, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of our haunted tales. The Discovery. This story happened about 2 years ago in the city of Campinas, in the interior of São Paulo state. The protagonist is Marina, a 23-year-old psychology student who shared an apartment with two friends near the city center. The apartment was old, built in the 70s, but had a special charm with its vintage tiles and dark wood furniture that the landlady left for the tenants. Marina had always been a skeptical person, one of those who didn't believe in anything supernatural. Ghosts, spirits, negative energy, all of this was nonsense in her mind. She had a scientific explanation for everything and always mocked her friends when they talked about mystical or paranormal things. This rational mentality of hers made her always the first to dismiss any strange event as coincidence or psychological suggestion. The apartment had 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, with the main bathroom located in the hallway and featuring a large mirror that occupied almost the entire wall above the sink. It was one of those antique mirrors with a slightly faded golden frame that you find in older houses. Marina's friends, Carla and Beatrice, always avoided using the main bathroom during the early morning hours, preferring the smaller one inside Beatrice's room. When Marina asked why, they gave vague excuses about the mirror being strange or giving them chills. First signs. Marina's first strange experience happened on a Thursday, around 11:45 p.m. She was studying for a neuropsychology exam when she felt the need to use the bathroom. As she always did, she went to the main bathroom without thinking twice. While washing her hands, she looked in the mirror and for a second, just 1 second, had the impression that there was another person behind her. She turned around quickly, but there was no one there. She laughed at herself, thinking it was fatigue from studying, and returned to her room without giving more importance to what happened. But things started getting stranger in the following weeks. Marina noticed that whenever she used the bathroom close to midnight, she felt a strange sensation, as if she were being watched. It was a discomfort that started in her stomach and rose to her throat, an inexplicable anxiety that made her want to leave the bathroom quickly. Even so, her rational mind always found an explanation. Study stress, hormonal changes, psychological suggestion influenced by her friend's comments. One Friday night, around 11:50 p.m., Marina was preparing to sleep when she heard Carla screaming in the bathroom. She ran to see what had happened and found her friend trembling, pointing at the mirror with eyes wide with terror. "She was there! She was there behind me," Carla repeated between sobs. Marina looked at the mirror but only saw the normal reflection of the bathroom. Carla swore she had seen a woman with long, dark hair, wearing something white, standing behind her in the reflection, but when she turned around, there was no one there. Marina consoled her friend, attributing everything to an anxiety episode or hallucination from fatigue. "Carla, you've been working too much, you're stressed. The mind plays tricks when we're exhausted," she said, always with her rational explanation. But something inside her began to become restless, especially because Carla was a balanced person, not at all fanciful or hysterical. The investigation. Intrigued by her friend's behavior and her own strange episodes, Marina decided to conduct a kind of personal investigation. As a psychology student, she wanted to understand if there was any pattern in the events or if it was just collective suggestion. She began noting all the details: times, lighting conditions, emotional state of the people involved, and any other factor that might be relevant. During 1 week, she observed that all the strange episodes happened between 11:45 p.m. and 12:15 a.m., always in the main bathroom, always involving the mirror. She then decided to talk to Mrs. Aparecida, the apartment's owner, a lady of about 65 years who had lived in the building for decades. At first, Mrs. Aparecida hesitated to talk about the subject, but after much insistence from Marina, she ended up revealing some disturbing details about the apartment. "Look, my dear, Mrs. Aparecida began with a heavy sigh. This apartment has a somewhat complicated history. About 15 years ago, a girl named Luciana lived here. She was around your age, also a student. A beautiful girl, but very sad, you know. She had just separated from her husband and was going through a very difficult phase of her life. The lady continued telling how Luciana developed a strange obsession with the bathroom mirror. She would spend hours looking at herself, talking to her own reflection, as if she were trying to find answers to her problems in the image she saw. Neighbors sometimes heard her talking to herself during the early morning hours, always in the bathroom, always close to midnight. One night, Mrs. Aparecida continued with a trembling voice. The neighbors heard a sound of breaking glass and screams. When the police broke down the door, they found Luciana unconscious in the bathroom, with several cuts on her body. The mirror was completely shattered, as if she had punched it with great force. They never managed to understand exactly what happened because she didn't remember anything. The most disturbing thing was that Luciana was found obsessively repeating, "She won't leave me alone. She wants me to go with her. She's waiting for me on the other side." After the incident, Luciana was admitted to a psychiatric clinic where she remained for a few months. When she left, she never returned to the apartment, and Mrs. Aparecida had to replace the broken mirror with a new one, exactly the same one that was there now. The confrontation. Marina was impressed by the story, but still maintained her skeptical stance. This explains everything, she thought. Luciana had a psychotic break, probably related to post-separation depression. And now this story has created an urban legend that is psychologically influencing everyone who lives here. She was convinced that the solution lay in psychology, not in the supernatural. She then decided to conduct an experiment. The following Tuesday, she would stay awake and position herself in the bathroom exactly at midnight, observing the mirror attentively to document any anomaly and prove to herself and her friends that everything was nothing more than collective psychological suggestion. Marina prepared herself like a true researcher. She brought a stopwatch, a notebook for annotations, and even decided to record everything with her cell phone to have concrete evidence. On the night of the experiment, Marina positioned herself in the bathroom at 11:58 p.m. Her friends were sleeping, and the apartment was completely silent. She kept her gaze fixed on the mirror, observing every detail, every reflection, every shadow. The stopwatch showed 11:59 p.m., 12 a.m., 12:01 a.m. Nothing happened. Marina began to feel victorious, confirming her suspicions that everything was psychological suggestion. But then, at 12:03 a.m., something changed. At first it was almost imperceptible, a shadow that seemed to move differently in the reflection. Marina focused more intensely, trying to identify the source of the anomaly. That's when she saw it. Behind her reflection, gradually forming like an image slowly materializing, appeared the silhouette of a woman. The figure was exactly as Carla had described. Long, dark hair, wearing something white that seemed to be a nightgown or long dress. But the most disturbing thing were the eyes, deeply sad, as if they carried an enormous weight of suffering. The woman in the mirror looked directly at Marina, not through the reflection, but as if she were really there, on the other side of the glass. Marina felt her heart racing. All her rational convictions began to crumble at that moment. She wanted to turn around to confirm if there was really someone behind her, but was completely paralyzed by terror. The woman in the mirror began to move, slowly approaching the glass surface, as if she were walking through a corridor that only existed in the reflected world. The climax. What happened next was the most terrifying moment of Marina's life. The woman in the mirror placed her hands against the glass surface from the inside, as if she were trapped and trying to get out. Marina could perfectly see the palms pressed against the glass, fingers spreading, trying to find a way out. The most disturbing thing was that she could hear, very softly, almost like a whisper, the woman's voice saying, "Please, help me. I can't get out of here." The voice was loaded with desperation, with such deep sadness that Marina felt tears spring from her own eyes. It was as if all the pain and suffering of that soul were being transmitted through that whisper. Marina finally managed to move and, on impulse, extended her own hand toward the mirror, as if she wanted to touch the woman's hand and help her somehow. The moment Marina's fingers touched the cold surface of the mirror, exactly where the woman's hands were, a wave of icy energy ran through her arm. She felt as if she were being pulled into the mirror, as if the woman were trying to switch places with her. At that instant, Marina clearly heard the woman's voice, now stronger. "Finally someone can see me. Finally someone can hear me. I've been alone here for so long." It was at that moment that Marina realized the terrible truth. The woman in the mirror was Luciana, the former tenant who had the psychotic break. Somehow, when she broke the original mirror, part of her soul became trapped in the reflected world, condemned to wander eternally among the reflections, trying to communicate with the world of the living. The new mirror that Mrs. Aparecida had installed had become a door between worlds, a portal through which Luciana desperately tried to return. Marina felt the force pulling her more and more intensely toward the mirror. She realized that if she didn't move away at that moment, she would be sucked into the reflected world and be trapped there forever, while Luciana would take her place in the real world. With superhuman effort, Marina managed to break free and ran from the bathroom, slamming the door behind her. The resolution. In the days following the incident, Marina could no longer enter the main bathroom. Every time she approached the door, she felt the same sensation of being pulled, as if Luciana were still there, waiting for a new opportunity. Her friends noticed the radical change in Marina's behavior. The convinced skeptic now avoided mirrors, especially during the early morning hours. Marina decided to research more about similar cases and discovered that there are various legends around the world about spirits trapped in mirrors, particularly in cases involving people who died or had severe psychological trauma near reflective surfaces. She also discovered that many ancient cultures considered mirrors as portals between worlds, which is why there are so many superstitions related to them. After much thinking, Marina decided to take action. She went back to talk with Mrs. Aparecida and suggested that the mirror be permanently removed. She explained the entire situation, including Luciana's story and the recent events. At first, the landlady hesitated, but after Marina related specific details that could only be known by someone who really had contact with Luciana, Mrs. Aparecida agreed. On the day they came to remove the mirror, something extraordinary happened. When the workers began to unscrew the mirror from the wall, Marina swore she saw, for a fraction of a second, Luciana's reflection waving goodbye, with an expression of relief on her face. It was as if she were finally being freed from her prison of glass and light. Since the removal of the mirror, there have been no more paranormal incidents in the apartment. Marina, Carla, and Beatrice lived there for another year without any problems. Marina was never the same skeptical person as before. She learned that there are things in this world that science still cannot completely explain, and that we should keep our minds open to possibilities beyond our rational understanding. Marina's story makes me reflect on how many souls might be trapped in objects in our daily lives, trying to communicate with us, asking for help, but we simply ignore the signs out of fear or skepticism. Maybe the next time you feel something strange at home, especially related to mirrors or antique objects, it's worth paying attention and considering that there might be someone trying to communicate. And you, have you ever had any experience with mirrors during the early morning hours? Have you ever felt like you were being watched by something you couldn't see? Share your experiences in the comments. I read them all and always respond. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more accounts like this, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell so you won't miss any of our dark tales. Next week I'll bring you the story of the corn cake vendor who haunts a small town in the interior. A story that will make you rethink accepting food from strangers. Until then, be careful with mirrors during the early morning hours, and remember, not everything we see is real, but not everything that is real can be seen. A hug and see you next time.